The Grand Harrington Hall in downtown Chicago had never looked more brilliant than it did on the night of the Alderman and Pierce Law Firm's annual gala. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden light across the marble floors. Men in tailored tuxedos moved between tables draped in white linen, and women in designer gowns laughed softly over glasses of French champagne. It was the most anticipated evening in the city's legal calendar, and every person inside believed without question that they belonged there. Elena Vasquez stood at the entrance. She wore a simple navy dress she had bought 3 years ago at a department store sale. Her heels were scuffed at the toe, the kind of wear that comes not from carelessness but from years of long nights and longer hallways. Her hair was pinned back neatly, and she carried a small clutch that had seen better days. She had been running late, coming straight from the office, and there had been no time to change into anything more impressive. None of that mattered to her. What mattered was that she had spent 5 years fighting for the people in this city who no one else would fight. For the security guard at the entrance, a broad-shouldered man named Dennis, looked her over with the practiced skepticism of someone who had spent years deciding who deserved to pass through a door. "Name?" he said flatly. "Elena Vasquez," she replied. "I'm on the guest list." Dennis scrolled through his tablet slowly, the kind of slowness that was not about searching but about making someone feel small. "I don't see it," he said. "Try under Vasquez, Elena, or possibly under the firm's associate list." A woman stepped forward from behind the check-in table. Her name was Patricia Holt, the event coordinator, and she had spent the entire week ensuring that every detail of the gala was flawless. She glanced at Elena with the particular expression of someone who had already decided the outcome. "I'm sorry," Patricia said, not sounding sorry at all. "This event is by invitation only. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Elena said calmly. "I received my invitation 4 weeks ago. I can show you the email." She reached into her clutch and pulled out her phone, but before she could unlock it, a voice carried across the entrance hall. "Is there a problem here?" Raymond Pierce, one of the firm's senior partners, descended the wide staircase with his hands clasped behind his back. He was the kind of man who entered rooms the way weather did, with weight and inevitability. His eyes moved from Patricia to Dennis, and then settled on Elena with visible irritation. "Mr. Pierce," Elena said, "I believe there's been a mix-up with the guest list." He looked at her for a long moment. If he recognized her, he did not show it. "I'm afraid we're at capacity," Raymond said, "and this evening is reserved for partners, senior associates, and distinguished guests." His eyes moved briefly, pointedly to her shoes. "Why don't you reach out to the administrative office on Monday?" The lobby had grown quiet. A cluster of guests near the staircase had turned to watch. Some held their glasses mid-sip. A few whispered to each other behind raised hands. Elena did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She slipped her phone back into her clutch and nodded once, the way someone does when they understand that the conversation is already over, not because they lost it, but because they have decided not to continue it. She walked back through the entrance door and into the cool October night. Inside the ballroom, the gala continued. Waiters moved in elegant arcs between the tables. A string quartet played softly from the far corner. Raymond Pierce returned to his seat at the head table and accepted a fresh glass of wine from a passing tray. At exactly 8:47, the firm's managing partner, Gerald Alderman, stepped to the podium. He was a tall man in his late 60s, with silver hair and the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades building something he was genuinely proud of. The room settled into attentive silence. "Tonight," Gerald began, "we celebrate not only the achievements of this firm, but the most significant legal victory in our history." He paused, and his expression shifted into something rarer than pride, something closer to gratitude. "5 years ago, a young associate came to me with a case that no one else would touch. 3,000 families in the Westfield district were facing foreclosure due to a series of fraudulent mortgage agreements orchestrated by a real estate consortium. The financial damage was catastrophic. The families were powerless, and our associate was told by more than one senior voice in this firm that the case was unwinnable. The room was perfectly still. She did not listen," Gerald continued. "She worked without billing a single hour to those families. She slept in this office more nights than I care to count. She turned down 2 offers from competing firms during those years because she believed that finishing what you start is not a professional obligation. It is a moral one." He looked down at the podium for a moment. "Last month, the court issued its final ruling. 3,000 families kept their homes. The consortium was held fully liable, and the attorney responsible for that outcome was supposed to be standing at this podium tonight." A murmur moved through the room. Gerald looked up, and something in his face hardened. "I've just been informed that she was turned away at the door." The silence that followed was different from all the silences before it. It was the silence of a room that understood collectively and immediately that something deeply wrong had just occurred. Raymond Pierce set down his wine glass. Gerald stepped away from the podium and walked to the entrance himself. He found Elena standing on the front steps of the building, her coat pulled close against the night air, looking out at the street with the patience of someone who had learned long ago that the world did not always move at the speed of justice. "Elena," he said. She turned. "I owe you an apology that this building doesn't deserve to contain," Gerald said. "Will you come inside?" She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked past him, through the glass doors, at the faces that had gathered near the entrance to watch. "In a minute," she said. She reached into her clutch and took out her phone. She scrolled briefly, then turned the screen to face him. It was the invitation. His signature was at the bottom. "I just wanted to make sure I had it," she said quietly. When Elena Vasquez walked back into the Grand Harrington Hall that night, no one spoke. The string quartet had stopped playing. Gerald walked beside her, and the room parted the way rooms do when they recognize that something important is happening, and they are fortunate enough to witness it. She took the podium. She did not look at Raymond Pierce, though he sat only 3 tables away with his eyes fixed on the tablecloth. She did not mention what had happened at the door. She spoke for 11 minutes about the 3,000 families, about a single mother named Doris who had called her on a Tuesday morning, crying so hard she could barely form words, about an elderly man named Harold who had brought her a box of oranges from his garden as a thank you, because it was all he had, about what it meant to believe that the law was not only a profession, but a promise. When she finished, the room rose. All of it. Every chair, every table. Raymond Pierce did not stand immediately, but eventually, under the weight of every other person in that room being on their feet, he rose too, not with pride, with something harder to carry. Gerald Alderman announced that evening that Elena Vasquez had been named the firm's newest junior partner, effective immediately. He also announced a new firm policy that all future guests at firm events would be received with the same dignity regardless of what they were wearing, where they came from, or who they appeared to be at first glance. Elena accepted both announcements with the same steady calm she had carried all evening. On her way out, she passed Patricia Holt near the entrance. Patricia opened her mouth, then closed it again. There were no words available that would have been adequate. Elena paused. "It's all right," she said simply, and she meant it. Outside, the October air was cold and clean. She stood on the steps for a moment before calling a cab, looking up at the city lights reflected in the low clouds overhead. She thought about Doris, about Harold and his oranges, about the years she had spent in offices that smelled of coffee and fluorescent light, reading case files until her eyes burned. She thought about the shoes. They were scuffed, yes, but they had walked every mile of that case. They had carried her through courtrooms and hospital waiting rooms and community centers and late nights when she had wondered whether any of it would matter. They had brought her here. And here, it turned out, was exactly where she was supposed to be.